This is the fourth and final video in the Clostridia genus, and it's on Clostridium perfringens. We've called this illustration Private Ringen's Motorcycle Crash. This scene is somewhat specific. It takes place in a recently liberated town during World War II. And that has no real significance of its own. We just thought it'd be an effective era and location to illustrate all of the symbols we need to cover. So, two of the classic presentations for Clostridium perfringens are motorcycle accidents and deep, penetrating wounds from military combat. For this reason, in this outdoor market, we're going to draw a private who has fallen off of his motorcycle. So we have the motorcycle accident, and him being a soldier should remind you of military combat. Both of these types of accidents are instances where a large amount of flesh are exposed to dirt and dust. And by now you should know that this is important. It's because, like all other Clostridia, Clostridium perfringens is a spore former, so the spores can be found in dirt and soil. We'll continue to use the walnut symbol for this. Let's draw them over here to the right. They've been knocked over by his motorcycle accident. And since being found in soil is very important for this one, much like it is for tetany, we'll use the same pots of soil to represent this that we did in the Clostridium tetany monkey research lab. We'll also have them knocked over and spilling dirt all over the street. And just like the other Clostridia, perfringens is an obligate anaerobe. Again, we'll use our gas mask symbol for this. It fits quite nicely into this story because the private just happened to be carrying one with him. We'll draw it on the street over here next to him. There are two diseases caused by perfringens that you need to know about. One's a soft tissue infection known as gas gangrene, and there's a type of food poisoning. Let's start with the tissue infection, and then afterwards we'll discuss the food poisoning. When Clostridium perfringens enters the wound and causes an infection, the disease is known as clostridial myonecrosis, or gas gangrene. In the disease process, gas is produced under the infected tissue. Clinically, this presents as crepitus or a crackling sound on palpation. The gas is produced as the organism consumes carbohydrates. To help you remember this, we're going to draw the gas rising from the motorcycle. The mechanism behind the necrosis involves an alpha toxin. It's important for you to remember the name of this toxin, so before jumping into it, let's draw an alpha flag hanging from the clothespins. The alpha toxin is a lecithinase, which means it cleaves lecithin, which is a phospholipase, and causes damage to cell membranes by damaging the lipoproteins. And we have a clever way for you to remember that the alpha toxin cleaves phospholipids and damages cell membranes. Notice how the clothespins are shaped sort of like phospholipids, and they're arranged opposite from each other so that their tails are inside and the head's outside. We organize these clothespins to look like a phospholipid bilayer. And with this alpha flag here, you know this is the site of the alpha toxin. When red cell membranes are affected by the alpha toxin, hemolysis ensues. We'll represent red blood cell hemolysis by showing these tomatoes, which sort of look like red blood cells, falling on the ground and getting smashed. Since it can lyse red blood cells in vivo, it can also lyse them in vitro. So when you plate it, it has a zone of hemolysis. Actually, it's just not one zone of hemolysis. It's unique in that it forms a double zone of hemolysis on blood agar. To remember a double zone of hemolysis, we're going to draw a red sign here that says double fine zone. The sign's red like blood agar, and the double fine zone for double zone. Yep, now our private's going to get a really expensive ticket just so that you can remember double zone of hemolysis on your exam. Also, remember that perfringens is an anaerobe, which makes it unique from the other bugs we've learned about that can hemolyze blood agar, like Group A, Group B strep, Listeria, etc. You won't mix these up, because you need to plate C. perfringens in an anaerobic environment, and that would definitely be mentioned in the question stem. Now let's get into treatment. First line for Clostridium perfringens is IV penicillin G. So to remember this, we'll draw our pencil for penicillin in this shopkeeper's hand over here. Alright, now we'll move on to the second disease process caused by perfringens, which is food poisoning. One important feature you'll need to remember about the diarrhea caused by this food poisoning is that it's late onset. This is because the food poisoning occurs from ingesting a large amount of the spores. These spores have to then germinate in the gut and then produce the toxin that causes the diarrhea. And this is somewhat unique. All of the other spores we've talked about needed to germinate and produce toxin outside of the body so that we ingest preformed toxin. Like, remember Bacillus cereus, the guy was reheating rice over the fire. This reheating caused the environment that triggered germination of Bacillus cereus. Same for botulism. But in this case, the spores themselves can cause food poisoning. But since we need to allow them to germinate in our gut and then produce toxin, it takes a while. It's slow onset. To remember slow onset, we'll draw him having knocked over this slow sign, and it'll be lying in the puddle of leaking gasoline. This watery brown liquid will remind you of watery diarrhea, and the slow sign is of course the slow onset. As for most diarrheal food poisonings, the diarrhea caused by Clostridium perfringens is transient and usually doesn't require antibiotic treatment. And that's all we think you need to know for perfringens. So with that, we're done with perfringens, and we're done with the Clostridia genus.